Okay.
Nobody wants to see that.
Sure we do. Good morning and welcome to the County of Berrien. It's a pleasure to have you all here this morning as we conduct the business of the county. Just as a little housekeeping, a reminder, silence all phones. While I say that, I'm going to check and make sure mine is silenced. It is. And if you, during public comment, wish to address the board, please do so by coming to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction, and you have 2 minutes to speak to us on whatever topic it is that you wish to speak to us on during public comment. With all of that being taken care of, roll call. Madam Clerk.
Bell,
Here.
Curran,
Here.
Freeling,
Present.
Harrison,
Here.
Hinkleman,
Here.
Majerick,
Here.
Hott, Pitchford,
Present.
Fallraff,
Here.
Werfel, Yarborough, Elliott. Madam Chair, you have 9 present, 3 absent.
Thank you very much. I know that we have some that are traveling and some that have been hit with this upper respiratory for sickness. And so, but we do have a quorum, so we'll conduct the business of the county. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from May 16th. Everybody received those?
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes from May 16th.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Pitchford, support by Commissioner Volrath. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Minutes are approved. Requisition review.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Does anybody have any questions about the requisition list?
Everyone's received those? We're good?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Those will be making their way around the table here. And so now we come to scheduled discussion, and this morning's topic is about early election. We're going to receive an update from our county clerk, Sharon Tyler.
I'd like to introduce to you Catherine Clemensrud. She is my election administrator, and she put this PowerPoint slide for the presentation together today. And she was also the one who was instrumental in getting the grant monies for early voting, and she deserves a major applause for that. You're gonna go through this part with the click. Okay. Early voting began because of Proposal 2. And I'm one of them who decided not to vote for Proposal 2. And the reason for that is because there is no reason absentee, which is very similar, because you could just go vote. But because it's been passed, I've been very passionate about implementing it. And I do see certain values. Now, early voting must be up to 9 days. Personally, you could probably do with one less weekend, because we find that it really dies down the participation or start on a Monday. But unfortunately, this is something we are going to live with for a long time because it's a constitutional piece now. So a lot of the changes will be not decreasing, it'll probably be increasing. So we did a synopsis of what took place within the early voting and what we're going to see in the future of early voting. Before we started, we did some preliminary work and we visited St. Joe County, Indiana, who had early voting. And we had some discussions, me and Catherine and I went to visit them. We scouted certain areas in space to make sure they were accessible to all needs. We entered a county agreement. There are 30 local municipalities within the early voting. 2 decided to go without Berrien County, which were Benton Township and Bainbridge Township. The 28 decided to go into the county-wide agreement. Now, in those county-wide agreements, even though the 2 go separate, we still have to write their grants. We still have to work with them to create the agreement. We still monitor them. We still look after them, and we work with all 30 of them in a great, unbelievable partnership as a team. We also had to organize site supervisors for each day of the early voting. We applied for the first grant, and in that training, we had 14 sessions of training 300 people in 2 locations. We used the health department on Napier, and we used the South County building. And we also sent out, which was a major major project, which you wouldn't believe, and I would have to thank a lot of county employees. We had to notify all voters in varying counties with the postcards. The postcards were drawn by our printing department. It was a big project notifying everybody about early voting. During early voting was the first time was the presidential primary. So early voting was from February 17th through the 25th. So this is what we had in voters. In North County, we had 224. In South County, 241. So countywide was 465. As you see, Bainbridge had 34, Benton Charter Township had 101 for 600. That means we only had 0.5% in early voting. Now, you see these numbers are very low. And on the east side, when I talked to other local county clerks, they saw higher numbers. But one of the items which changes on early voting for a presidential primary, voters have to pick either a Republican or a Democrat presidential candidate. We did have a couple of schools on that ballot also, but people do not like to sit there and ask for that ballot. The other thing is it was very brand new and people had to readjust to it. And it was interesting, every morning I was very blessed by a TV station coming to the early voting site. And I would do a little piece on one of the local TVs or radio stations or the newspaper. And that seemed to get more people out. Like, I saw you on TV, I came out to vote today. Now in the state primary election, it's August 6th. Early voting will take place from the 27th through August 4th. The November 5th election will take place from October 26th to November 3rd. Ballot on demand. This was a new thing that came out during early voting, and I think this is an excellent tool. And it will be something that will grow to the future.
My apologies.
Are we on that one?
We're on,
Or are we gonna do, what are we
it's
doing?
being touchy, I'm sorry. There we are.
Thank you.
Oh, the mouse,
What happened?
the mouse, I'm sorry, the mouse is in the way.
She really wants me to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there we are. I apologize. Was the mouse was
Now, I
getting
told
rolled
you she
up
was
by my
excellent.
paper.
She's still excellent. What we did on early voting, we did print out ballots, but not to the quantity that you would have thought. And the ballots we printed out, if they were not used, we gave them to the local municipalities to use for this regular day of voting. But what happens is you go vote, and when you go to, you fill out the application, when they take the application to the person with the e-poll book, they will be able to place that name in, tell them which ballot they have to print off, and we buy the blank piece of paper, it prints off the ballot they need, and then they vote. It takes very little time, not a long wait. Now, in the next grant, the second grant, which we applied for, and we were approved, which you're gonna hear a little bit more through this presentation, we ordered one more. Now, the ballot on demand is the same piece of equipment we used for
Voter assist terminal.
voter assist terminal. But you can't use that piece of equipment for both. It only allows you to use it for one thing. So we ordered additional ballot on demands. The other thing what will happen, and I do believe it will happen in the near future, is that if we have to change the ballot to a foreign language, this will give us that capability within that ballot on demand to be able to print it into whatever language we need. It did save money on printing the ballots. The only problem is when we're in South County, you don't have enough generator power. If I shut down, we had that big storm with potential tornadoes and that, you have to maintain power to be able to do that. That's where the paper ballot would be the better suited. So you got to take both of those and try to balance. Do I order this many ballots or do I go to a ballot on demand? Go to the next one. The challenges we faced were we got a major cyber alert during that time period. And one of the things what we did because of the and I worked with the sheriff's department within the emergency management, Homeland Security. We have an emergency plan placed together. So what happens is if we have a major issue, I would call Rocky Adams and his staff. They would contact all my clerks, notify them that, hey, we have an issue. Now, what's different about us than a lot of the other counties, we do have Dominion, and everybody says, oh, Dominion, no Dominion. We do not, only thing we are hooked up to the internet is on the e-poll books. The tabulators are not. Now, in other counties, and the state is not guaranteeing it. As you watch on election night, like, did I win, or where are the results for that? It's because we're not hooked to the internet. You can tell which ones who are hooked to the internet by that they're in first. We will probably be late because every time the local clerk has to bring this in a flash drive, we put it in. I don't want that question. I don't want to be challenged until they come up with the best item of transporting that information that we can work with. Then we may make it that we can receive results a lot faster. But at this time, it calms individuals down and it helps in the situation. We did have an issue during early voting at one of the local municipalities, and during early voting, clerks have to be in their office on a Saturday or a Sunday. And a lot of times our site supervisors are basically local municipality clerks or their assistant clerks. So they have to be in their office. So one of our surrounding ones had an interesting individual walk into their office, which put us on a high alert. They closed basically their office down and you had to call outside. And so we reacted to that issue during presidential primary. We always have the sheriff's department on duty. We always like to have the lights on in the parking lot, and so that when people are coming in, and especially on election night, it's very dark in your parking lots and the light's not in. It's just, this has become more of an issue to election workers and gaining regarding their safety due to weathers and storms. So we have been really working hard on that. And also we are provided through Homeland Security and the Sheriff's Department with walkie-talkies that we can talk directly or hear other alerts within the state and within the US. Now that crisis plan, it was interesting. I went to a conference and we were talking, what would you do? And it was with Homeland Security. And we were one, and there's probably others, but we were one of the main ones who had a crisis plan. And I have worked with Rocky Adams and his staff, and we created a template that other local other counties could utilize themselves in case there was an emergency. You can go to the next page. Again, I already spoke about the weather. So the maintenance agreement. This one, legislation or our legislators need to react. Under the maintenance agreement, under the first early voting, we were denied maintenance agreement. And the maintenance agreement sometimes ends up being more expensive than your software. And it's becoming a major issue. So in that cost for the maintenance, it's $2,200 a day with one person available. If you go regional, again, it's $2,200 regional a day or $300 an hour. So when it came to early voting in February, we got brand new equipment. And usually when you get equipment, what was delivered on Friday and you start early voting on Saturday, you would think there would be some guarantees and warranties. And when I talked to Election Source, they said, Sharon, don't buy this warranty or this maintenance agreement yet. Until we resolve it, we don't have the people to implement what we're offering to sell you. So knowing it was new equipment, they gave us the first day free. We had some minor issues, but it was like certain locks or something like that. Things what we could resolve on our own. Brian Kill, who is my election coordinator, who's not here today, was able to mend it with a screwdriver or little tiny things. But if it was an issue, we would have taken our equipment, what we have for a regular election, we would have swapped it out, reprogrammed the equipment instead of paying the $300 an hour. We will probably do this again because we still do. And so a lot of the municipalities like Hager, Royalton, and others plan to do it, have reduced their precinct size because there was legislative change to increase it. So what we do have is extra tabulators, extra e-poll books that we could switch out, then resolve it when we have our normal maintenance cost. Now, is this going to be an issue in the future? Yes. We're only in the first year with everything. That's great. But in 2 years, I don't know what that equipment's going to be like. So it's going to be a problem. I do know there are a lot of organizations and on the federal who are talking about the maintenance agreement, because I keep on filling out these surveys and everybody keeps on saying this maintenance of this equipment is very expensive. Now, will it affect you? No, but it will affect you as a local resident because that cost is passed down to your local municipalities. Okay, I'm ready for the next one. FICA was another issue, what we had an issue to the workers. And we went back and forth with Fabius on this one. And we learned that on election workers, they are exempt from the FICA tax, but if they get to a certain dollar amount, then it does occur. So now we have to ask certain questions. What also has been kind of an issue within the personnel things, certain things what we have to ask is, are you a Republican and Democrat? Well, on a county end, you can't, but we have to know because we must match up an election worker with a Republican with a Democrat. And so those have been the kind of the challenges like the FICA tax, and we had to refund certain people taxes, and it just was more time. We've spent more time than we needed to due to a FICA tax. And I would say that was probably the biggest issue of learning that process. Post-election. Again, I'm not going to go through this long. On the early voting before the election, they had to decide on a countywide agreement. They could go regional or they could go independent. So on April 15th, the municipalities could have decided, like Benton Township and Bainbridge, to join us, but they would have had to do it before April 15th. And then the next time they can change it, every 2 years, those agreements have to be redone. So what you have now is only existing now. After April 5th, if you want to withdraw, it's June 7th. So right now, there is when it comes to August, they will have a choice again. Do you want to stay with the countywide? Do you want to stay in this agreement? Do you want to withdraw? It's a small window. So when they get to between the August and November, it is a very small window to make that decision and choice. But so when we got done with the election of the February, I spoke to the two independent. One was considering that in the future, depending where the site is located, that they may go with the countywide. They realized there was more work to it than they needed to do for as few of the votes they had. Next one. Early voting grant. This was the first early voting grant. And the only thing was what we didn't get covered was the maintenance agreement. So I'm not going to read to you. The total grant was approximately $134,984. There is no match dollars to that. Again, we had to write the grants for Bainbridge and for Benton Township also. What?
This is a breakdown. So the equipment that was fronted to us was the 134,000 plus, and then the breakdown of the other equipment that we had to order separately and get reimbursed on are the other denominations that are listed there.
So the total was not
The total is not, yeah,
Okay.
so that,
The one thing is, as you can look at the cost on ballot bags and other items like that and voting booths. Now, the cost of the, are we going, let's go to the next one. Now, this is the non-early voting grant. As we had 3 schools, what were up, this is the cost. We had school, their cost was $9,105. As you can see, the breakdown, that was all reimbursable to the county. They may have had also costs which would be reimbursable to the local municipalities. We were reimbursed for the Board of Canvassers for $2,248. As you can see, the ballots, what we had was $59,000. That's why the ballot on demand becomes a cost savings. Programming and coding, and it keeps on going, the temporary workers. Now, if we wouldn't have had the non-early voting grant, now this only happens during a presidential election primary, only during the presidential primary. Because the political parties, the Republicans and Democrats, pay that cost. They pay it, we put in our bill, and then the state reimburses and they collect from the political parties for those primaries. In some cases, you will find, and I've seen it in the past, that you might find that one party decides not to have a presidential primary and they just take it only to convention. But this is the cost. So when you saw the grant and the early voting, that there was 2 different ways that we had to go for reimbursement. One through the state, one for the other. But otherwise, it would have been the cost and the expense by the local units divided by those 28. This was what was billed to the local schools for reimbursement. This was the deadline time period when we had to submit everything for the early voting grant was May 1st. We got it in before that. It does take a long time for the state to reimburse us, but you will get that money, finance department, I promise you. And you can keep on going to the next one. And this is the presidential primary. They had till May 27th. We submitted everything in. It was hard to get all the costs and everything and gather it from our local municipalities and that, so that all the reimbursement costs. Again, we'll have to wait for that also. And since we didn't do the maintenance agreement, we didn't have that cost to be spread amongst the others. Let's see if there's something else. Now, when we wrote the first grant, the cost for the election workers does come under the first early voting grant. It didn't come under the second, so we still have monies available within that grant. You can go to the next one. This is the second grant. Now, if you're in the finance committee today, you will see a resolution. Because we have been awarded the grant without the maintenance costs, this is the breakdown. At the following meeting, you will allow us to receive the money with that resolution. So you've already given me approval to write the grant. Now we've got the approval for the grant. And then, so that will be brought to you. And I think, is Annette in here? Nope. I don't know if I'm coming to finance committee to explain it, but since we're having this, you probably won't need it. It's just to receive those dollars.
you're not.
Okay. And this is the letter from the state of Michigan that we received the grant. Future grants. So far we've been awarded $61,118.59
Second grant.
on the second grant. So that's what we had. Now, the one thing is the equipment, which is $19,381. That will never go through your budget or the finance because the state of Michigan is ordering the equipment directly to get a better cost. So even though that you're approving it, it won't be we will not see that money pass through. We will just be receiving that equipment. And as you can see, we will meet May 23rd with county finance, so you'll have that resolution. And I hope that you will approve that. And I'll tell you, this was a major project putting together, and I'll tell you, a lot of people all around has helped. Our local clerks were unbelievable partners. The IS department met all our needs. Corporate counsel advised us on issues, so we didn't step into big sinkholes or anything. But on the whole, it was very positive. Was it slow for a lot of the election workers? Yes. But I do feel that with August and November, the turnout will be totally different than what we saw. I don't feel that anybody should compare the presidential primary to what we'll see in August or November. If you talk to any of the election workers or the local clerks or my staff during early voting, that we're exhausted, but we will be courteous and friendly and assist you. One thing always to remember, that when you're doing early voting and you received an AV, you can cast your AV ballot into an early voting tabulator. And I appreciate all the support you gave me to implement this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, for that update, and appreciate all the work on your behalf and the staff. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Pitchford. Sharon, there's a couple questions.
I'm sorry.
No
I
problem.
was gonna dash away.
Just turn your mic on.
Yeah, if you wanna.
Oh, okay.
So Benton Charter Township and Bainbridge decided to do this independently. You said that we're still submitting grant applications or helping.
We have to, yeah, the BOE, the Bureau of Elections, has made it that the grant applications must all go through the county.
Mhm.
And really, they have very little that they have to provide. Well, they have to tell us what they need or what they want. And a lot of times we will suggest to them, don't you feel you might need this, that it will be covered under the grant. The one issue is that our local municipalities must make sure that they spend that money during the early voting time or prior, not after the fact, because if they try to purchase it after the early voting, it will not be awarded.
And the North County polling location for early voting, and then the Benton Charter Township location, did we find any crossover or people who may have been confused looking for one or the other one?
No, we really didn't see any of that issue. The only kind of other issue we saw was one lady left her purse inside one of the ballot booths, voting booths. And we located her and got it back to her, but really no issues that, and I think everybody wanted just to see what it was like, but we really didn't have any issues, nobody angry. One thing what we did find, what was seemed to become more useful, these feather flags seem to attract more people than just a small stick into the brown sign. So as soon as we changed that out at LMC with Napier and we put it out at the South County building, it totally changed. More people drive in. And it was interesting, at certain times it felt like Saturday morning, you could tell that parents had young kids and they're probably at a volleyball game or something like that. Sunday after church, we would find a pickup. And the weirdest thing is when we were closing on early voting on Sunday, we had a group of people walk right in. It was like, now? But that's their choice.
Right.
And that's what's so great about it. It gives a lot of flexibility. It still keeps you with 3 options of voting: the regular same day of voting, the early voting time period, or the no reason absentee. And I am very grateful that we have a no reason absentee, because I think in the past people had violated that. And we don't need to be enforcing that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, thank you again for the
Thank you.
update. Appreciate it. With that, we'll move on to public comments. So anyone that wishes to address the board, come up to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction, and get 2 minutes.
Melissa Clapper, St. Joseph Charter Township. Just want to thank Catherine and Sharon and everybody that was involved. I was lucky enough that I was kind of observing in both places, both South County and North County, and really did go off without a hitch. And I was one that decided to take my absentee ballot in just so I could tell people how it worked, and it worked great. And actually, the workers there were kind of happy because they had a chance to practice it. So even though it was kind of slow, we had observers there. It was like, it's so boring. It's like, boring day is a good day, you know? So when you're voting, you don't need a chaotic day. So, you know, kudos to everybody that was involved. I do believe too that we'll see an uptick. I think a lot of people just weren't sure how it was going to work and where it was going to work and confusion, but you know, it's kind of like the best of both worlds for those people that like to spend time with their ballot other than in the voting booth, but sit at home and still like the actual action of putting it into the tabulator. So I think that option will help a lot of people. But as Dana Nessel said when she was down here a couple weeks ago, we've made it so easy for people to vote that there really is no option other than I just don't want to vote. So kudos to everybody that implemented it. I know that it caused a little consternation with people. I'm like, really? Why do we have to have all this? But as Sharon said and Catherine, they did an excellent job of making sure that it was implemented and implemented successfully. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mrs. Clapper. Are there any other public comments? All right, hearing none, then we can stand adjourned a little bit early and go to our parent committees.